Budokai Tenkaichi, or Sparking, depending on what region you're from. This is a household name, and a name that holds a lot of value to a lot of people that grew up with Dragon Ball in the 2000s. This series plays a pretty significant role in my childhood, and with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero right around the corner, I just want to go back and replay the previous trilogies or the mainline series just to gain some insight, or just to see if these titles age well from a perspective of someone who loves Dragon Ball and the fighting game genre as a whole. With that said, my name is Zenos, and it's time we have a dialogue about the Tenkaichi series. Now, Budokai Tenkaichi was released in 2005 and was published by Atari and Bandai and developed by Spike. This was a different time, back when they were just making wrestling games and visual novels right before they even picked up an anime license game. Though Budokai and Budokai Tenkaichi do have similar naming conventions, Budokai was handled by Dimps, and of course Tenkaichi was handled by Spike. You can definitely notice that these two games play different from one another. You may notice in Budokai, the camera is in a 2D perspective in a 3D environment. Now when we get to Tenkaichi, oh, we're 3D baby. The camera is pulled all the way to the back. We're still in the 3D environment, but we can move around in the 360 now. We're doing something different. We're trying to go above and beyond now, which at the time, this was a huge deal. No other Dragon Ball fighting game, or really any anime fighting game at this time, did something like this. You had up to 64 playable characters, both from Dragon Ball Z, the movies of Z, GT, and OG Dragon Ball. This game was practically a Dragon Ball fan's fever dream. The only real question is, did it age well? Now, when it comes to the presentation of Tenkaichi 1, graphically speaking, for a PS2 game that came out in 2005, this game aged somewhat well. I do think the character models and the art style represents Dragon Ball pretty well. The same goes for the environments. There are a lot of iconic stages that you will see throughout this game, even though there were only 10 stages, like the city, the islands, the wastelands, the hyperbolic time chamber, Kami's tower, and hell, even the world tournament. All of it looks good, and hell, they get the job done. And mind you, these environments were destructive. Now, of course, we gotta talk about the opening for Budokai Tenkaichi. Yes, this opening, this opening used to scare me as a kid. Some of these models look kind of weird, especially Goku. Why is his posture looks a little weird? And don't forget about the Goku and Vegeta tips. Now, we can't forget about that. That is a classic. One thing that I will always praise Tenkaichi for is the way the menus are designed. Yeah, I just feel like they have a lot of charm to them. From Gotenk spamming Ghost on the loading screen, to the commentary between characters whenever you choose where you want to go in the menu, the character renders and graphics that appear on the PNG that make the menu even more dynamic than what it originally supposed to be. And I'll be real, part of the reason why I love doing motion graphics and making like these cool menu intros was because of Tenkaichi. It was a big inspiration for me. Now, when we get to the music, oh boy, 95% of the soundtrack of Budokai Tenkaichi 1 was from Budokai 1, 2, and 3. From the menus to the music that plays in the story mode. Hell, even the end credits to the game are from Budokai. The only original song that I found in this game was the intro. You can't make this up. Now let's go over the content of Tenkaichi 1. So you have the Z Battle Gate, which was essentially the story mode for Tenkaichi 1 that covers the Z saga, some of the movies for Z, GT, and OG Dragon Ball. Hell, there's even some what if scenarios. If you want to go that route, you get a prologue of the arc, you get a little cutscene, a little bit of talk here and there, and you just get straight to the fight. Some of these fights have certain conditions like surviving until the timer ends, defeating the opponent down to the health bar hits 0, or defeating the opponent with a special attack that is iconic from this source material. And if you don't follow these conditions, well, you're cooked. And as you go through the story mode, you unlock new characters, new arcs, and hell, you even get rewarded with Z items that you can use to upgrade your character in the ultimate battle mode. You can also collect the Dragon Balls throughout the story mode, and you can use those Dragon Balls to unlock different scenarios and characters. Now, personally, extremely tedious. You have Ultimate Battle, which was essentially a big tower mode where you go through and fight 100 characters, and your goal is to be at the #1 top ranking spot. Now, the cool thing with this mode is that you are able to use your Z items to customize your build for your character, which also brings me to Evolution Z, which is your way of editing your character's stats, essentially. So you want to give them extra homing dashes to their kit, you want to give them more damage, you want to give them more speed, health, or passes that can help your said character be stronger. You can do that. You can also fuse items, 2 of the same items in fact, to get an even stronger item. Now, there are some videos that do go deep into the fuse system. I do recommend you checking that out if you want some little fun facts or some tips here and there. Then you have the world tournament mode, similar to how it is in the Budokai games. You have your basic levels of the world tournament, which your goal is to defeat the opponent, either by taking their health down or ringing them out. And then you have the cell games, which has a similar win condition, except you need to take their health bar down to 0, and perfect cell being the last opponent that you fight against. You also have a character illustration mode, just a biography of you looking down different characters. You get to know who the voice actors are or behind the character and so forth. Just a nice little addition. And then of course you have the local PvP mode. It wouldn't be a fighting game otherwise without one, where you can fight the CPU, another player, or watch 2 CPUs go with it. You have those options. Now, there is a practice and tutorial mode in this game. However, it's a little bit limited in some factors. Like, the tutorial mode itself is cool. They give you the basic rundown of the game, and hell, they even give you video demonstrations of how certain mechanics work. And there is a training mode, a limited one, very limited. Jesus Christ, you can really only set the CPU to stand and computer. But overall, there was definitely a decent amount of single player content to go through for a fighting game. Now, we can talk about the visuals, the presentation, the content, Tenkaichi being cool, but what about the gameplay? I think this aspect is very important, because you can have all the style in the world, but if you don't have the substance, or rather the gameplay not being up to par with everything else, then we have an issue, especially for a fighting game. And it's something alright. Let me go ahead and give you guys the rundown for the gameplay for Tenkaichi 1. So for your basic controls, you have your hand-to-hand combat, which is essentially your rush attacks. You have your key blast, a guard button, your dash button, which you mainly use for movement, your key charge button, your lock-on button, and your ascend and descend button. Now, when you look at the UI, you got your health bar, you have your key, then you also have your 3 stocks, which are these 3 little balls right here.
What did he say?
And to the bottom right corner, you have your map and you have your smash bar, which I will go into more detail in the later half of the video. Now, when it comes to the movement, this is where things get a little interesting. Since this is an arena fighter, you can move in a 360 axis. You can ascend, descend, jump, and there's proximity movement in this game. So you may have noticed when we get closer to the opponent, this is the step-in barrier, which allows you to be able to throw your opponent, do dodge rolls, and strafe around your opponent. When we move away from the opponent, this is where we get to the movement barrier. You know, we have more freedom when it comes to the movement. Doing both dashes and dragon dashes are now possible. Speaking of dashing, there are 2 types of dashes in this game. There are regular dashes that don't cost meter, and there's dragon dashes that cost meter. You can cancel your dashes, you can move up, down, left, right, or you can head straight towards the opponent. You got a decent bit of wiggle room when it comes to the movement in this game. Now let's go ahead and talk about the offense, starting with your rush attacks. This is pretty much gonna be your main tool of offense, and this is your way of building both key meter and also building smash meter. And you can also charge your rush attacks, which leads me to the gauge system that's on the bottom right. See, this is called the smash gauge. As you're doing combos, building your rush attack, you will notice that you're gonna see a little bit of bar right here increase. Now there are 3 levels to your bar. You have green, yellow, and red. Green being the weakest smash attack and red being the strongest smash attack. The higher the level, the bigger the knockback. Now this gauge is different from character to character. So some characters can do it better than others. Now, pulling off a full power smash attack can lead to homing dashes. And hitting in the yellow step, you can do a little chase as well. You can also dash into a rush attack or dash into a key blast. There's also throws in the game, and there are finishing moves with different varieties. You have your rush supers and you get your key blast supers, which can range from beams to barrages of projectiles. Then you have your clashes, which can range from either key clashes or rush clashes. Now let's talk about the ways that you can open your opponent up in this game. So of course you have your rush attacks, which do all 4 of them and it leads you to a knockdown state. You have key blasts, which all vary depending on what character you play. Some characters have slow key blasts, some characters have fast key blasts. It just really depends. Some of them even got different properties. You can rush into step invasions, you can rush into key high cannon, or charge key high cannon, which these are essentially unblockable moves that put you at an advantage. But since there's so much startup time, your opponent can't dodge this. Oh boy, it can be very crucial. Have rush into heavy finisher or just doing the rush into gut punch, which kind of staggers the opponent and leaves a lot of stun time on them. The issue with this route is that it's unsafe. Now you can stagger it and make it into a loop, but the CPU can teleport out of it and it can block it at any time. You can rush into charge attacks or smash attacks. You can do a dash chase afterwards as a follow-up. You can rush into guard, which puts you in a counter state. It does cost a little bit of meter. If the opponent hits you, you can do a follow-up that can lead into a knockdown, or you can rush into a vanish, and this is a decent safe option. Now, fun fact, when you're hitting your opponent from the back in this game, pause, you do deal a lot more damage. That has always been a Tenkaichi staple. Now let's get to the defensive options. So there is a 5-way guard system in this game. You can guard left, right, up, down, and neutral. And depending on if your opponent throws a charged rush attack, you have to block it all 5 of those directions. There's key blast reflecting and deflecting in this game, and there are even timed guards in this game. Say if you hit the guard button right as the opponent attacks you, you can gain the advantage and get your turn back. There are step invasions, attackable grabs, and there's the vanishing system. Now the timing is a little tricky, but it is possible. And there are surprisingly a different amount of knockdown states. After getting knocked down, you can hold back to recover. Hell, getting hit with charged rush attacks, you would have to hit a list of commands, and if you hit those button prompts properly, you can recover and even do a follow-up right after. And there is some moments where if your key is down to 0 and you get hit with any attack while you're guarding, you're gonna be at a stagger state, or we'll just call it burnout, when you have to mash your buttons out. Next, let's talk about passives, starting with max power. It may cost 1 stock, or in this case, this game calls it favorite stock. When you charge your key to the blue, you will gain max power and you get a decent amount of benefits. You can do hyper smashes, which are essentially unblockable. Power smashes don't require any build up. You can just charge them to any level and you can just hit them off without having to build the combo up. And you have access to your ultimate moves, and they do a lot of damage. Then you have your favorable moves, or I guess your passive abilities, depending on what character that you play. They don't cost key, but instead they cost stock. Now, these passives can range from increased damage, defense, increased key, a health regen, and it just varies from character to character. Now, some of these abilities can be used as reversals, such as Explosive Wave. Now, all those factors that I listed from the gameplay side of things is cool, and it makes the game definitely unique and stand out. However, there are a lot of issues in this game. Rush supers are unblockable. The only way you're gonna get out of these situations when you recognize a rush attack in this game, which is very risky, throw another rush super to clash with them, or throw a super key blast. Those are the only options you have, and I genuinely wish you the best of luck. The majority of your routes in this game aren't real. There is so much inlag to a lot of the moves that you do, to the point what really doing combos or even trying to find the right structure for your combos feels so limiting, along with just doing any type of offensive pressure. I'm gonna be real, it sucks. It truly sucks, and I don't like it. Now, as harsh as I am with the feedback when it comes to the combat for Tenkaichi 1, I want to give some credit where it deserves. This combat is unique. It's a little unpolished, and again, this is the first installment. Them just trying to figure the idea of how they want the game to function and work. It's just, for me, I don't want to go back to this game again. There are some good ideas, they just weren't polished and worked as well in practice. This game as a whole, as a product, is good. You know, it was revolutionary for its time. You know, the visuals, the presentation, and the overall feel of Dragon Ball is there, and I will absolutely give this game credit for it. But the gameplay is kind of cheats, but it's a cool starting ground. I do not see myself playing this game after this. However, this cannot be said for Tenkaichi 2.